Darren and Marissa arrived at the entrance of the corn maze. Just as the sun began its slow descent behind the hills, the orange and pink hues of twilight stretched across the sky, casting a golden glow over the field of tall, rustling stalks. It was the perfect autumn evening, and they had driven for hours to visit the maze, to be one of the largest and most challenging in the region. Hand in hand, they approached the wooden sign that read, "Lost Hollow Corn Maze. Enter if you dare." "Look spooky enough," Darren said with a grin, nudging Marissa. She rolled her eyes playfully, though, a knot of anxiety twisted in her stomach. "Come on, it's just corn," she replied with a laugh. But even she couldn't shake that uneasy feeling that seemed to hang in the air. There was something about the whispering of the corn, the way the wind seemed to carry strange faint sounds. As they entered a maze, the stalk towered above them, tall and thick, immediately engulfing them in a narrow pathway. The world outside seemed to vanish, the distant sounds of families and children from the farm falling away, until only the occasional breeze through the maze could be heard. Marissa glanced over at Darren. "Let's just stick to the right wall, okay? We'll make it out faster that way." Darren chuckled. "Where's the fun in that? Let's get lost a bit, babe." They wandered deeper into the maze, joking about who had a better sense of direction, but soon the laughter faded as the paths began to twist into more complicated patterns. Every corner looked the same, and the towering walls of corn made it impossible to see how far they had come. Then it started. The first sign was subtle, too subtle for them to notice. A soft rustling of leaves, louder than the wind should have caused. Marissa paused, looking around. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Darren shrugged. "It's just the wind." But moments later, the rustling came again, this time accompanied by what sounded like footsteps, a deliberate crunching sound from the corn itself, like something or someone was walking through the stalks purled to them. "Okay, now I heard it," Darren muttered, his voice quieter than usual. He looked into the darkening maze, trying to see beyond the stalks. There was nothing, just the endless rows of corn. "Let's keep moving," Marissa urged, gripping his hand tighter, her pulse quickened, sense of dread starting to creep into her chest. They took a few more steps forward, then suddenly from the corner of her eye, Marissa saw something dark between the rows, a shadowy figure, barely visible to the dim light. She froze. "Darren, there's someone in here with us." Darren laughed, but it was forced. "It's probably just one of the maze workers trying to scare us. They do that, part of the fun." Marissa wasn't convinced. "No, it didn't look like anyone playing a part." As they rounded another corner, a chill swept through the maze, and the wind seemed to whisper in a language neither of them could understand. The temperature had dropped, and once inviting maze had become a labyrinth of fear. Then they heard it, a low, guttered moan. It came from behind them, but when they turned, there was nothing, just the corn swaying in the growing light. "We need to get out of here," Marissa said, her voice barely a breath. Panic was rising in her chest. Darren nodded, no longer joking. He looked around, trying to find any landmarks or markers, but the maze had become disorientated. The paths were narrower than before, closing in on them, and every direction they turned seemed to lead back to the same spot. Suddenly, the cold hand brushed against Marissa's arm. She screamed, whipping around, but there was no one there. Darren grabbed her, pulling her close. "We need to run! We need to run now!" They started running, their footsteps pounding against the dirt path. The maze seemed to twist and contort around them, leading them in circles, the exit nowhere in sight. All the while, the rustling of the corns grew louder, closer, as though something was chasing them, always just behind the next row. They they stumbled into a clearing, a dead end. Darren cursed under his breath, his eyes scanning the maze for any sign of escape. Marissa's breath came in short gasps but constricting her throat. And then they saw it, a figure standing at the edge of the clearing, barely visible in a dim light. His face was obscured by the shadow of the corn stalks, but his presence was undeniable. It didn't move, but the air around it felt thick, oppressive, as though it was drawing the very warmth from their bodies. "What is that?" Marissa whispered, gripping Darren's arm so tightly it hurt. Before he could answer, the figure took a step forward, then another. Darren pulled Marissa back, trying to keep distance between them and the figure, but there was nowhere to go. The maze had closed around them, trapping them in its twisted heart. The figure drew closer, and as it did, the shadows around it seemed to pulse with life, reaching out like tentacles from the darkness. The air filled with whispers, unintelligible but insistent, as though the maze itself was speaking to them. Marissa's knees buckled and Darren caught her just before she fell. "We have to move," he said, his voice shaking. He lifted Marissa's up, carrying her while running, still in the search for an exit, until finally he sees one. "We are out of here! We are out of here!" But once he reaches it, he realizes it's just another entrance of the maze, and it all starts again. Both of them scream as loud as they can, but the screams go unheard, and the maze stood silent once more, waiting for its next visit.